Hey, everybody. Welcome into a little bonus content here on Volquest.com on the YouTube channel, a little pre-Monday night chat. We will continue this conversation over at 10 o'clock Eastern time on the Journal's Quarters Monday night chat. You can continue this with us and join the site. $1 for your first 2 days, $1 for your first 2 days over at Volquest.com. Obviously, a lot going on right now. And then the story of the day is Tennessee parted ways with Tim Banks, defensive coordinator, after 5 years. Brent Hubbs, it was a move that was being discussed amongst the fan base, since the end of the regular season. Obviously, the 2024 defense was elite. His defense got better up until that point. Big drop-off this year, and, here on a Monday morning or, midday, you guys reported that Tennessee's parting ways with Tim Banks.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of Tennessee fans, it's been a talking point for 4 years. I mean, Tim Banks, unfortunately, was never really the most popular guy. I don't think that he got enough credit for what he did a year ago, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people were just over him and, for whatever reason, didn't like him or wanted to move on. But obviously this defense, Austin, did not perform to the level that it needed to perform at in 2025. And at the end of the day, I mean, Josh Heupel said in his release, he's got to do what's best for the program. He's got to do what's best to move forward, and felt like this was the move that he needed to make. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's never about who you fire. It's about who you hire, and we'll see where Josh Heupel goes from here. But I mean, Tim Banks' defense in 2024 is the reason they were a college football playoff team. But in 2025, they weren't where they needed to be, and that's the world we live in.
Yeah, I mean, every year they had improved until this year. Every year, statistically, they had gotten better. And that's the mark of a team that's trending in the right direction this year. They took a step back. You could talk about, the lack of production in the secondary, whether it be the safeties they've recruited and developed, whether it be, you could talk about the injuries with, obviously losing Ricky Gibson a handful of plays into the season, not having Jermon McCoy at all, the Boo Carter, experiment disaster after the summertime stuff. Defensive line was not as active as it was a year ago, not as deep. They got after the quarterback really well early, but then kind of slacked off after about 5 games. And you're right. I mean, listen, for as long as I've been doing this and really back before then, like, the defensive coordinator has never gotten a lot of praise. People got tired of Third and Chavis. They got mad at Chief. They got mad at John Jancic. They got mad at Bob Shoop. They got mad at whoever has been Tennessee's defensive coordinator over the last 25 plus years. And it's just a spot that, like, I think sometimes it's a thankless position, because I think fans expect, you to be Buddy Ryan and hold these teams to, minimal points. But, listen, it was just not good enough this year, period. And going into year 6, I think Josh Heupel could not stay with the status quo, and he decided to go in a different direction. Time will tell if that proven to be right or not. We talked about it on our podcast a week or 2 ago, that the next 9 months are pivotal, because, Tennessee's not too far off the tracks. You make the right staff moves, you make the right portal moves, you could be right back there a year from now in the CFP. You make the wrong ones, and, it can go the complete opposite direction.
It's a good, not a lesson, but just goes to show you where, college football can change, on a dime. This is a guy that, again, had the elite defense a season ago, got a contract extension, was making a little over $2 million. Now is out a year later, separation pay. He's going to be, getting paid a lot of money to go elsewhere. The question now is, guys, and I know we don't have all the answers right now, but everybody wants to know who's next. Give me all these different names. Is it just because Heupel knows them, or is it legit what you're hearing? What type of defensive coordinator to come in next? Brent, you've mentioned, Austin, you as well, that you guys believe this will go pretty quickly. That doesn't mean it's happening tonight. Doesn't mean it's happening at 8 a.m. in the morning. But for him to make this move away from Tim Banks on a Monday would lead to believe that he kind of has at least an idea of where he wants to go. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you better have an idea. I don't think you make these moves blindly. As fast as things move out there with hiring assistants and things like that. I mean, I think you have to have a plan in place. And I think Josh Heupel has a working list of a couple of guys, 3 guys, and see where that leads him to. I don't know that there is just one absolute slam dunk that's the only one that you go get this guy and that's it? Or, I think Austin, if you're Josh Heupel, while everybody may be talking about one particular guy and Ryan Walters or whoever, I mean, you better do all your due diligence. You better look around. You better make sure because this is as you said earlier, this is a critical hire that Josh Heupel is making.
It is. You better be, crossing, all the T's, dotting all the I's, making sure you feel comfortable because the facts are, this will probably make or break Josh Heupel, this hire. It's Josh Heupel's offense. We all know that. He always talks about that. So the offensive side of the ball is his. The defensive side of the ball, typically under Josh Heupel, it was Tim Banks, and it'll be whoever they hire in this next realm. Is it Ryan Walters? I mean, he's somebody that has ties to Josh Heupel, has ties to people on Tennessee's staff. That would make some sense. And so we'll see kind of where this thing goes. But he's a young guy who's had success at a number of different stops as a DC. The 1 year as a head coach didn't go so well, but that's okay. Not everybody's cut out to be a head coach. And Purdue at the time, in the NIL era, was a bit of a train wreck. So I don't think that was his fault either. So, again, we'll see where things go. But that one makes, when you're connecting dots, makes the most sense. And we'll see if anybody else gets heavily involved over the next 24 to 48 to 72 hours.
Yeah, talking about Ryan Walters, of course, you mentioned head coach of Purdue for a couple of years, defensive coordinator at Missouri, pretty good defense there. There was a crossover with Heupel as well at Oklahoma for a year or two, if I'm not mistaken. He's at Washington now. And again, not trying to back anybody into, a pigeonhole here or whatever, but any other names like a Walters that might make sense, given the ties, given the history with Heupel, or just given the history of the league and the longevity, or simply that these guys might not have jobs right now?
Well, everybody throws out Jim Knowles doesn't have a job right now. Where is he going to land? Now, he was making $3.2 million or whatever it was at Penn State. I don't think Josh Heupel has any knowledge or knows Jim Knowles in any way, shape, or form. I don't know that that's a direction they would go. The co-defensive coordinator at Alabama's name has kind of been floated out there as somebody that might be somebody that's looked at. The defense coordinator at South Carolina is another name that's kind of been floated around out there. But those are names being floated. I don't know that there's anything serious with anybody. And I don't know that there's anything, how serious anything might be with Ryan Walters at this point either. It's just, he's the flavor of the night, if you will, or the flavor of Monday, because he's the one with the most ties. He was a GA at Oklahoma when Josh Heupel was on staff there. They worked together at Missouri. They were on the same staff there at Missouri. Seth Luttrell was at Oklahoma when Walters was there. Alec Ablin was at Missouri, right, Austin? When Walters was there. There are people kind of intertwined, not necessarily defensive coaches, but intertwined people with the Oklahoma background, Missouri background that understands who Ryan Walters is. And that's the tie that everybody's kind of jumped on right now.
William Inge is the interim defensive coordinator, expected to call plays in Music City Bowl and handle the day-to-day responsibilities, throughout practice and all that. Austin, do you know if William Inge, could there be an in-house promotion? Would that be him? Do you think he's a candidate for this job right now, or do you know?
I personally do not believe that to be the case. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but I would be surprised if Josh Heupel was going to make a change and just promote from within. I think if he was going to make a change, he was going to go and try to go as big as he possibly could within his framework with what he wants from a DC to fit into his staff and his culture and his players. So yeah, I would imagine that this is going to be an outside hire. I would be pretty shocked if it wasn't.
We'll answer some questions here in a moment. We're making notes of some questions we'll get to. Brent, back to you. And again, you might not know this right now. Like, it's a different program. It's a different landscape than when Josh Heupel was first looking for a defensive coordinator back in the winter of 2021. What do you think he's looking for in a coordinator this go around? I mean, this is a team that's got lots of talent. It's a team that can win some games next year for sure. You look at Tennessee's well-resourced from a rev share standpoint, NIL standpoint. What do you think Josh Heupel, maybe X's and O's schematically, that he's looking for this time around in a defensive coordinator?
Well, I mean, I don't think you can go crazy. I mean, if you're not built to be a 3-4, you're not going to be a 3-4 defense. I think in this day and age, you got to play 5 defensive backs. So I don't think, I think that's part of what you look at too. So, what I think he's looking for is I think he's looking for a guy who can tie it all together, that they can communicate better than they communicated this year, tackle better, some fundamental things that they're looking for there. I think is what Josh Heupel is looking for. They've obviously got to be more effective than they were. And I mean, Austin, Josh Heupel is better than I do, or as well as I do. I mean, he doesn't make decisions like this. He doesn't take a decision like this lightly. He's not one to make a change just for making a change. So we clearly felt like some things, not just this year, but I think even overall, that they have to be better at. They were, I mean, obviously numbers wise, they were a really good defense in 2024. They didn't get off the field on third down at Georgia that year. They struggled on third down. They struggled with a lot of stuff against Ohio State in the playoff game. The reason they were in the playoffs, the defense was, but they were not perfect either. So I think he's looking for third down stops, get off the field. I think he wants to stay aggressive on defense and be an aggressive defense. But I think it starts with some of the communication issues that group had all year long at all 3 levels of the defense.
Yeah, I mean, I've had multiple people talk to me about are things just too complicated? And I don't know that, right? I mean, I don't know if they are or not, but I do think if things are complicated and you don't communicate well, that's where things get sideways. And so the ability to get off the field, which they did really well a year ago, versus this year where they just struggled mightily, to me is big. And again, I think we're looking at fit here. Josh Heupel is big on the culture. He's big on the fit. And so who is that person? Again, from a pure, relationship standpoint, Ryan Walters makes the most sense. The question is does he want to go with just the comfortable hire? Even is the comfortable hire the best hire, or is it just the comfortable hire? Does he go outside and go with a non-comfortable hire that he feels like can take his program to the next level? Because he knows how important this. I mean, he's very aware of how important this hire is.
Well, and I think the other thing too in that group you got to add in there's development, player development. Where's that at? I mean, this is a defense that their better players have been transfer players, and there's nothing wrong with that. The portal's a real thing, but also continue to develop some your high school players at some positions, and they've had high school players make impacts. Don't misunderstand that. They do, but I think there's certain positions where they've been more portal heavy, where they need to be a little more, player developed and continue to grow and get better, and not just kind of piecemeal it with a 1-year player in the portal and things like that. I think those are things Josh Heupel is looking at as well.
Go to Donovan here with the super chat saying we are a soft football program. That is what has to get fixed this offseason. Coach Heupel also needs to hire a time management person too. Yeah, we made comments about that, throughout the season, obviously, and then clock management and game management and all that. The soft program comment, I mean, that's kind of been mentioned a time or two here in the last month. And, Tennessee's making a change at defensive coordinator today. There's a bunch of questions in the chat as well. Could there be more changes on the horizon? At least from the defense. Let's start there. On the defensive side, do you guys see everybody staying pat until a DC is hired, and then that guy maybe kind of pick and choose who he wants to keep, extend contract? There are a couple of those guys that are on expiring deals as well. What do you look at on the defensive side for those guys right now?
I think it depends on what happens, what the DC wants. They did it in reverse order when Josh Heupel was hired.
Yeah,
he had all the pieces in place, and then he brought in Tim Banks, which I think is really hard to do.
And Tim is only BJ.
Right, he brought in one guy with him. He brought in Brian Jean-Marie with him, but everybody else was in place when Tim Banks was hired. I think you're making the move you're making today, and then you hire a defensive coordinator, and then you and the new defensive coordinator evaluate where you are as a defensive staff, what you need, what you don't need, what you want, what you don't want. Do you want to bring somebody with you? If you bring somebody, if you can go get somebody, is it better than what you have? I think those are conversations the head coach has with his new defensive coordinator, and then it goes from there. So I don't know the answer to it, but that would be the order of progression would be that way, as opposed to telling a defensive coordinator candidate, you can't, nobody comes with you. This is what your staff looks like, that type of thing. I think that limits your scope of who you can hire if that's the move you make. And that's the qualifiers you put on that. I mean, things like that prevent head coaches from taking jobs. It'll certainly prevent a coordinator from taking the job too.
Let's quickly shift over and kind of ask that same question for the offensive side. I know we're talking DC here today, but could you see any assistant coaching changes on the offensive side this offseason?
I mean, for me, Austin, I don't see it unless somebody gets a job somewhere else right now. I mean, this was an offense that put up a lot of numbers. We know Josh Heupel and Glenn Ellerby are pretty affixed to each other because of what Glenn Ellerby does in the run game for him. I mean, Joey Halsey's name's been floated out there, but I don't think it's ever been serious with any other job. I don't see Alec Abelin looking for another job. I think the tight ends got better. He did a nice job with that group. I think Kelsey Pope could be a guy who is sought after by other schools. And, I think that's one that you have to get. You got to get that deal done and ironed out if you're Tennessee, because I don't think that you want to get I don't think you want to be in a position where you might lose Kelsey Pope.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I think he's the most important person on the offensive side of the ball. He's been your best recruiter in this cycle. I think he's really coming into his own as a coach. I think he's starting to really, figure out both sides of it. He's as a recruiter, done a really fantastic job the last few cycles. And I think he's only getting better. So I think that's somebody you want to try to lock down. It is Kelsey Pope on the offensive side of the ball. I do think there'll be more changes on the defensive side of the ball. Again, time will tell how those shape out and what the new DC wants. But I do think that on the offensive side of the ball, priority number one is getting Kelsey Pope signed to a new deal. I think that's the most important thing that Josh Heupel can do over the next few weeks is get that locked down, get that done, and then figure out what you're doing on your defensive side of the ball, and then figure out who your quarterback is going to be in 2026.
Go to another super chat here, and this kind of leads me into a couple of questions I want to ask you guys. Do you guys see any big-time defensive guys entering the portal, since it doesn't sound like Tim Banks was the main recruiter for any of these guys? Could this move force some guys into the portal whenever that window opens in early January?
I don't think so. Again, I think the most important thing you can do as a coach right now at any school is to make sure you have a full staff come the portal opening. Because if you don't have a linebackers coach, you need linebackers. And what linebackers signing up to come over here and play for a school that you don't know who's going to be coaching? I think the most important thing you can do is if you're making changes, make them, get the replacements hired. And that way, when the portal opens in the first part of January, you don't have to go and go, we're going to try to hire the best guy. You don't want to say any of those things. You want to be ready to go and be very aggressive. Again, Tennessee's ability to go out and land top-end players out of the portal, I think, will be pivotal to flipping this thing back around. Again, we talk about like Randy Sanders falling on the sword in 2005. That was a group that went 5-6. They were preseason ranked third, but they didn't make a bowl game. In this era, 8-4 has this kind of angst, right? So it's just it's a different time in college football, and I think being able to flip the script with portal players, flip the script with your staff is really, really important. And you got to do all that in a timely fashion because this thing all comes to a head by mid-January.
So that was portal talk. What about recruiting? Signing day was last week for the 26 class.
Yeah, I don't think it really affects it, Eric. Nobody's going, oh, Tim Banks is gone. I'm not coming here. I don't believe that to be the case. Even then, I think the way I understand the rule is a kid would have to go into the portal. A kid can't go into the portal until he starts class, and Tennessee's classes don't start until after the portal closes. So, if they really wanted out, I'm sure Josh Heupel would let them because nobody wants that black eye. But I don't believe that to be something that's going to impact the recruiting class.
And probably too early to even tell on the 27 side, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, that just doesn't matter. I mean, like you can't. You don't make changes. I mean, like because of the portal, because you have so far until next signing day, none of that stuff impacts any of that.
Yeah. Another super chat here from Devin. Thoughts on Will Muschamp or Gerard Mayo, or is Walter sounding like close to a done deal? Brett?
I mean, I don't think Will Muschamp's ready to go back into the frying pan. He took a step back from coaching to be around his kids, spend time with his kids. He's got one at Vanderbilt, and he's got another son as well. I've not heard that name. I know a lot of people have thrown that out there because he's quote available right now. I mean, I guess he's an analyst for Georgia, but you could get that if he was ready to get back in. I don't think Josh Heupel has any type of relationship with Muschamp. Gerard Mayo wants to coach. When I talked to Gerard back in September when he was in Knoxville, he felt like he was going to have some opportunities in the National Football League. Does he want to recruit? Does he want to do those types of things? I mean, I think if you ask Gerard Mayo, would he have interest in coaching his alma mater? Sure, I'm sure he would. Is he the right fit for Tennessee right now? I don't know. I mean, I know he's a former player, and I know everybody loves a former player, and I think he's a smart player. I think he's a good football coach. But is he everything else that you need him to be as well? I think his preference would be to stay in the National Football League, at least based on the conversations I've had with him.
Little palate cleanser here. Bruce wants to know if AP's Christmas trees hit the transfer portal.
No, just repositioned into my bedroom.
Okay. Let's see here. Steven has an interesting take. Is this conversation even happening if the loss to Vanderbilt hadn't occurred? I mean, there were clearly issues before the Vanderbilt game. The Vanderbilt game was kind of the exclamation point on top of the whole nightmare, right? Are we having this conversation if the Vanderbilt game went the way it did?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I certainly think there were some concerns, but I certainly think the Vanderbilt game was a huge catalyst for this stuff too. So I don't know for sure one way or the other. AP, you may have a different feeling than I do on that.
I think it was probably still headed this direction, but I think that certainly put the final nail in it.
Yeah, when you didn't have an answer for Pavia at all, I think that was certainly the case. But I mean, I think you had concerns coming out of Kentucky, the Kentucky game where they moved the ball and you gave up big plays. You played better against some bad offenses, and then you played a good offense at the end, and they took you out to the woodshed.
Tony wants to know, you guys may not know, but do you think we'll have a new DC in a week? I would imagine this is probably locked up in a week, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's what you hope. I mean, if it's not, then I think some people have turned you down, Austin. I think was where you're at if you're still dealing with this a week from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I'm looking at the next 72 hours, right? I mean, I think, I don't think anything's done. I do think that they've, certainly have made some headway. And again, now it's about, coming to terms and, dotting I's and crossing T's. Until then, I think you're kind of still just, just trying to finish this thing out and go from there. And again, trying to, talk to as many people as you can and because you just never know how these searches, you may think you have one and then it doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden you got to restart. You don't want to restart. You want to continue to talk to people. That way, if something happens, you can pivot in a hurry and not be pivoting like with, head on the swivel.
Well, we saw that. I mean, Tennessee had Dave Aranda done. It was going to get announced after a bowl game. And then LSU comes in and gets Dave Aranda away from Tennessee before Tennessee gets it all signed and done. And then they do a pivot, and it takes, a couple of weeks to get Bob Shoop done. And that was kind of a mess to get that one done, too, with all the buyout stuff and everything else there. So, yeah, I mean, and nothing counts until you got an MOU signed. And so, we'll see. I think you got to do your due diligence, but you better have a list of some people, not just all for one guy, and that's it.
We'll get to a couple more questions here. Again, we can continue this conversation on the Monday night chat over on the General's Quarters at Volquest.com. If you're not a member, $1 for your first 2 days. Come join us here. Continue to ask some questions in the Monday night chat that starts at 10 o'clock Eastern time at Volquest.com on the General's Quarters. Let's get back to some questions. I've seen Justin Wilcox's name float around for the DC job. Is there any chance that happens?
I don't think so. I don't think he has any desire to come back this direction. I think if he stays in college football, it'll be out on the West Coast, or he might go to the National Football League. I don't think Justin's locked in or tied into anything, but I don't think there's a relationship there. So I would be surprised if Justin Wilcox was back in the SEC, back in Tennessee. Now recruiting's different. Recruiting's changed a lot since he was here the first time. I think coming from where he came from at Boise to Tennessee, the recruiting part really shocked him in the South. I don't think that would be the case now, but I just don't see him relocating back to the South unless it's an NFL job.
Another super chat here. Do you think big name DCs will be turned off by the way we run offense? This was a big talking point the first go around, trying to get a defensive coordinator to come in, complement this offense. It's going to run tempo. You're hardly ever going to win the time of possession battle. I feel like it was much more of a bigger deal in 21 when we hadn't seen it, hadn't experienced it than it is now. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, I agree with that. I do think that the way Heupel has played offense post 22, so 23, 24, and 25, the ability to, especially this year, they went tempo some, and then they knew how to slow it down some. Mm-hmm. I think that makes the job more attractive for a defensive coordinator. In 21 and 22, it was snap it as quickly as you could, and boom, 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 and it really put stress on the home team's defense, right? In terms of Tennessee's defense. It's been better. You proved last year with a top 10 defense that it can be done. I think it's a much more attractive job now than it was when he got here.
Well, here's the other thing to keep in mind to it being attractive. You're also paying a lot of money. And people can compromise some things when you're paying somebody $2.5 million or whatever this number is going to be. So I think that changes the attractiveness of that job too. Because, I mean, it costs some money to get Tim Banks here, but they're paying a lot more money now than they were when they all got here. And that's sort of the trend in college football. But I do think you have enough money that it gets everybody's attention.
Thundercat 1027 wants to know, could the new DC coach in the bowl game? He won't, but we've seen some of these new hires have a headset on the sideline. They're not really doing much, but I mean, they theoretically could be down there. But I mean, the new coach would not coach in the bowl game, right?
No, I would not anticipate. I mean, he's not going to put his defense in 12 practices or whatever and go play that way. I mean, that's certainly not going to happen. So no, I mean, I think he would use use the bowl practice as just analyzing what he's got talent wise, figuring out where he needs to go, how he can adjust his scheme to what he's going to have to work with, and that type of thing.
I've seen it before, not like coordinator or anything like that. I'm blanking on his name. The former Ole Miss coach that was fired. He got fired, went to Georgia, and was coaching the Georgia offensive line in the Cotton Bowl. Yeah. Coaching Georgia's offensive line in the Cotton Bowl like a couple weeks after he got fired. I thought that was weird. Rusty mentioned that he was told the Vols would be going in on Knowles first. Is T-Rob not a big-time hire with this recruiting chops? T-Rob would be the Travaris Robinson, who is at Georgia, co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach, and, of course, Jim Knowles, who you've already mentioned. Heard anything about those two guys?
Well, we mentioned Knowles earlier. I mean, here's my question with a guy like T-Rob and some other guys, Austin. I think when you deep dive into this is have they called defenses before? I don't think this can be an on-the-job learning experience in terms of calling a defense and, managing, getting a play in time and all of those types of things. I think you have to go get an experienced coordinator. And T-Rob's called defenses before. I don't want to suggest that he's not. But I think anytime you look at someone who's got that co-title, is it a title just to pay them more money, Austin, or are they really co-coordinators? Because I think you have to have somebody who's ready to step in and really lead and run this thing.
Yeah, again, you get one shot at this. You do not get a second go around at this, in my opinion. So you better get it right. It better be somebody that's called defense. Learning on the job is probably not a good thing. And again, I think you have to try to figure out what's the balance between somebody you know and somebody you're comfortable with versus somebody that you're not, but you also feel might be a good hire, and he's got to figure out what direction he wants to go. Knowing Josh Heupel, he is going to roll with somebody that he is very comfortable with, that meshes with his culture, with what he wants on his staff. And I think that's what he's ultimately going to have to decide on, and what I think he will decide on.
Last question. Does the DC need to be a recruiter, or is he expected to mainly focus on coaching?
Most coordinators don't do a lot of recruiting. Now, you still have to recruit as a coordinator, right? You still have to call the recruits and talk to them and tell them how they're going to fit into your scheme and this and that. But no, the answer is very simple. You don't have to be an elite recruiter as a coordinator. You just have to have the ability to recruit. That's most coordinators these days. There are very few out there that are dogged recruiters that are out there just, spending all the time on the phone. Most of these guys are game planning for their next opponent, even into the off season when they're getting ready for next year's set of opponents.
Yeah, but those guys, the coordinator has to. The war daddies, their most important recruits, or most high profile targets. You got to work the phone relationship with those guys, and you've got to make them feel very wanted beyond just a position coach. Not everybody you recruit, you don't have to do that with necessarily, but your biggest priorities, you're going to have to do that.
All right. Good conversation here, about 30 minutes leading into the Monday night chat. So we thank you guys for being here with us, sending us in some super chats, some questions.
Yeah, let's answer that one right there on the screen. Mark Stoops is not going to be at Tennessee. I don't think those two are going to. I don't think he's going to be the fit into Josh Heupel's program. So that's not a realistic candidate.
More and more conversation about who the next defensive coordinator can be. Updated nuggets on the Journalist Quarters as we get them throughout the day tomorrow, this week. So follow us. No better time to join us at Volquest.com than right now. Literally right now. We'll continue to answer questions in the Monday night chat. If you're watching us, listening to us, we thank you. Come join us. 2 days, $1. Your first 2 days, $1 at Volquest.com right now, 5 minutes away from the Monday night chat. And, of course, your number one spot during this coaching search cycle for Tennessee's next defensive coordinator. For Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, I'm Eric Kane. Thanks for joining us here on a little Volquest.com defensive coordinator chat here on the YouTube channel.